all of us, authority is how all of us are then guided to make decisions that are correct for us and correct for use of our energy, no matter what type we are. Okay.
Right.
Right. So for the manifestor, again, they're going to have just a couple variations on their authority. The biggest one is there's going to be manifestors who are emotional or non-emotional. Right. Human design reveals who you are energetically and who you came here to be. I'm Dana, human design specialist.
And I'm Haley, the human design newbie. Listen in as we explore how leaning into your authentic self is your ultimate path to success. Welcome to the Human Design High podcast. Let's get into it.
Hello there, Haley. How you doing?
Hello, I'm good. Good.
So nice to see you.
Yeah. Always.
Oh, of course, always.
All right, that was great.
I don't know what to say. Like,
you started like you had something to say.
I did, but then I'm like, how do I get there? Because
just start talking about it.
Here we are. It's daytime. I know, but normally we kind of ease into it a little bit about something. So,
or you can just go for a cold open.
Cold open. Well, let me tell you, Haley.
Do tell.
Feel a little frustrated here with the technology.
Yes.
Wasn't necessarily going to talk about it, but I feel like now that these episodes are more on the regular, I'm having the video format. It's on YouTube and YouTube music, that, you know, people might notice the difference in quality. You might, with your channel of judgment, projectorness, to be like, sometimes their videos look like this and sometimes they're like that. Well, for one, I am experimenting with how I like to brand it and put it out there and the aesthetic of how it's arranged. But also, you know, we're having such difficulty remotely recording because of Wi-Fi, basically. The internet, I think, is the problem on my end. You know, the last episode we were recording, it just crapped out on me like 3 times using Squadcast and not happy with
Squad. It's the rooftop
right now. Yes. I mean, it gives you that nice video, but it could be literally like, I feel like I'm having to make my own, like, build it myself video. Sometimes it feels like so much work just to get it to record there a little bit better, because I'm not a big fan of the Zoom recordings. But, you know, let's be honest. It's you, it's me. We're not a team. We don't have a production team. You know, we're just 2 people having a conversation 2,000 miles away from each other. So
yeah, you know, it's not by letter or carrier pigeon.
Not by letter. Or there's even audio here, you know? So yeah, this is real life. This is us struggling with technology. And you know what? Getting the damn thing done anyhow. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be done. And that's the main goal. Is, again, I got to switch the video screen around because it's putting you to the left. I realize I'm not looking more directly at the camera. So today we're on Zoom. Yay! Yay, Zoom, the old workhorse of video conferencing. Not sexy, but effective. And it works. And watch, it'll probably crash. It'll probably crash probably 3 times today. But anyway, so yeah, that was that. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, you know what? I really love fall. I really do love fall for the most part. Like a day like today, the fall morning I had today was, it got really cold here fast in South Carolina. It doesn't happen too often to go from like 80 degrees to the next day is like 50, but it did this past week. So we had some cold nights and then it's slowly been warming back up. But this morning it was one of those beautiful fall mornings. It's sunny but cool, crisp. And I remember stepping outside I just popped my head outside for a minute and it was that coolness, crispness that I experienced when out west. It took me immediately like, God, I wish I was out there in like New Mexico or generally New Mexico desert. You know, the times that I've been camping and you wake up in the morning and it's chill, you know, it's sunny, it's bright, but you can smell the sage. And it's just like, oh, I had closed my eyes for a few minutes and just like drink it all in and be like, because, you know, we get so used to the areas we live in and our experiences and we just like kind of block out our senses sometimes. You know, it's like we just automatically like, oh, I'm here in South Carolina and it's my backyard and blah, 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 you know. And then I was like, I'm just going to take a moment to appreciate and, you know, the sensations, the way I feel when I'm out in the desert. Oh, God, I really need to get out there. But it's getting colder and colder every day. I don't think it's going to happen. But man, I do love it out there.
It's nice.
I love the desert. Probably if I was at the desert all the time, I'd be like, man, I really want to go to the beach.
Yeah, no, it was when we went back to Charleston in June. Oh my God, it was such a difference. Like it was 10 o'clock at night. We're standing on a rooftop bar in Charleston and just, it's so sticky and gross. And me and Presley are like, oh my God, this is miserable. Because we're like, they're sweating and everyone else that lives there, all of our friends are like acting like it's nothing. We're all like suffocating.
I know. Look at you. You'd only been living out in Colorado a couple months at that point.
I know.
How do they do it?
I know.
But that's what happens, you know, when you move down here, like from, you know, I grew up in Ohio and it doesn't take very long before your sensitivity to cold, you know, gets more sensitive because you don't get those really just bone chilling cold days. I always say the coldest days here in South Carolina are usually our prettiest, clearest days in the wintertime. It's going to be like full sun, but cold as hell.
and windy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, a lot of times it is windy too. But we are blessed, especially you are too, out there in Colorado with lots of sunshine, even when it's cold.
Yes.
And, you know, seasonal affective disorder is a real thing. Like, I forget that because I've lived here now 30, almost 35 years, I guess. Coming up on 35 years I've lived down here. Only 18 years up in Ohio. And, you know, to think about, you could go like week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, not really see the sun. You know,
yeah, it sounds bad. Kind of this, sounds bad.
It's daylight, but it's like diffuse light all the time. It's kind of cloudy. And so
then it gets dark so early.
Yeah, I gotta remember to count my blessings. And but yeah, humidity's a real thing here.
It's just rough.
Yeah, it is. All right. So
and that's the weather report.
That's the weather report. Back to you. What's traffic gonna be like today? Well, it's kind of light this morning. Okay. Sorry. So let's get to today's episode about we're continuing and wrapping up a conversation around authority by type, right?
Yes.
So we've already covered the generator types, meaning the sacral defined manifesting generator and generator types. Last episode was about the projectors and the myriad of different supposed authorities, but really breaking it down to just hopefully a couple kind of in the now or not in the now.
Right.
And then now we're going to talk about manifestors and reflectors today because they make up the smallest portion of the population. And manifestors are about 9% and reflectors are about 1%. So first of all, when we're talking about authority, and it's funny when we do these series, it's usually towards the end of the series that I remember to kind of frame the conversation before we get into it. So each type is going to have a strategy and authority. And this is also the foundation, the building blocks of what everything else in your design is, how it's going to be best expressed. And you're going to start living in more alignment with your energy, less resistance, as if you are following your strategy and authority. So your strategy for each type is how you interact with other people, how you interact with the quantum field. It's your aura. It's how your aura interacts with other auras. And so we've covered, like I said, the generator types, the waiting to respond, the projectors waiting for the invitation or the recognition. And now as we move to the manifestor, what is the manifestor strategy?
To inform.
To inform. That's right. And so that means that the manifestor is the only type that is actually has the ability to get into action on their own. They are referred to as initiators. And as such, before we get too far, what defines a manifestor?
A motorized throat.
A motorized throat. That's correct.
And no sacral definition.
You are correct. Yes. So they have an undefined sacral center, meaning they do not have that sustainable energy as the sacral type does. However, they do have initiating, manifesting energy because they have one of the other motors connected to the throat.
Yes.
So, okay. So that means, manifestors in general, they have their own nonverbal creative flow. They are people who are directly connected, let's say, to source in the sense of bringing new things into the material plane, of being able to just have the idea, know what it is they want to do, and to be able to get into action. There, when we were talking earlier about those, not earlier, we were talking in previous episodes about the emotional themes of the different types to help you know if you're following your strategy and authority. For the manifestor, usually when they are not following their strategy or authority, the emotional theme they're going to experience is anger, they call it, which is a strong word, but it's accurate in the sense that because they have that nonverbal creative flow, it's internal, right? It's their own. They can't really explain it to anyone.
Right.
And they don't necessarily know when something is going to occur. They just become, especially when they're aware of it, more finely tuned of what it feels like when it's the right time to act. And since they don't need others, in the sense that they don't need anybody to help get that energy to the throat, they can just proceed. And this, without informing others of what it is they would like to do or what they're going to be doing, or, all these other things, it can lead them to either have disagreements or not disagreements, friction with people because they've either just disappeared, or maybe someone interrupts them while they're in the middle of their creative throw, and it creates that anger is really just this kind of this very intense focused energy gets interrupted, and it just shoots somewhere else. Like when you see lightning drop, hits a tree and then it hits somewhere else too. It's like this has to go somewhere.
It still needs to get out, but it's like if it gets interrupted, then it sparks. It's
going in the wrong direction. Yeah. It's not focused where it wants to be focused, and it just, that's more, I think, an apt expression or description of what we're talking about here. And then if the manifestor is following their strategy and authority, and they're moving in the right direction, there's less resistance, they have a sense of peace, knowing that they were able to bring out what it is that was within them that needed to be brought out. And so they can kind of just be at peace with things. They know that, everything's good. So that's, the strategy and understanding if you're using it properly. But then, as we said, authority is how how all of us, authority is how all of us are then guided to make decisions that are correct for us and correct for use of our energy, no matter what type we are. Okay.
Right.
So for the manifestor, again, they're going to have just a couple variations on their authority. The biggest one is there's going to be manifestors who are emotional or non-emotional, right? And hopefully by this point, if you've been listening to these in, sequence or whatever, you know that emotional authority is going to be the dominant authority when it comes to, especially for a manifestor, if they have other motors defined in the chart, if they have the emotional solar plexus defined, that's going to be their primary authority.
It's the top of the hierarchy.
That's right. So that would mean that the manifestor has a direct connection from the solar plexus to the throat to create that emotional definition. But they could also have, the solar plexus also defined to the ego center and the G center getting up to the throat, right? That gives them emotional definition. It could also go through the ego center to the throat. Or you could have, let's say, you just have the emotional solar plexus defined to the root, right? But then you have the ego center connected to the throat, right? So even though there's not that direct connection from the solar plexus to the throat, there is still a motor, the ego center, connected to the throat. So,
and the solar plexus defined.
Yeah, it's still defined down there separately, but in that instance, even though there's three motors in that case defined, right? Because I was talking about root to solar plexus defined, right? So those are two motors right there. The solar plexus.
The solar plexus is a motor.
Yeah, because we just said solar plexus to throat. That's a motorized throat.
Why did I forget the solar plexus was a motor?
I don't know, but it's funny. Yes, so if it's root to solar plexus, that's two motors there that they could have defined. And then if they had the ego center, maybe either just going directly to the throat or even going through the G center to the throat, that would then be three motors connected, maybe not all connected to each other. But even in that instance, if they had all three of those motors defined, right, still it's going to be that emotional solar plexus. Like you said, that's the top of the heap there. It's going to have the dominant authority. So if you're a manifestor, that solar plexus, no matter what configuration, if that is highlighted, you are an emotional manifestor, and it's going to show up on the report. It's going to say emotional manifestor. Okay. So this is a difficult configuration. I think a challenging configuration in general of types and authorities, because here you have this initiating energy, right? But because they have emotional authority, yes,
it's very clashing.
Yes, they still have to wait. And in there is this in the community, especially when people are first coming into understanding manifestor types, there is this belief that they can just act whenever they want, which even if they're not emotional, that's not necessarily true, because it's they still have to have the timing right. They have to know when the right time is. And if they are emotional, that means they do have to wait before they get into action. And then what do they do before they get into action?
They have to inform.
They have to inform still. And so, I mean, they don't have to inform, but things are going to be a lot harder.
Makes it easier. Makes it easier if they inform.
Less effective, let's say. And so, yes, because as we said, if you are emotionally defined, it means that you have to take your time to make bigger decisions. You have to wait it out through your emotional wave, which could be, high highs, low lows. It could be a ratcheting up and then a dropping off. It could be, more even undulations in between, but still your wave is going to be unique to you. It's not going to be like anybody else. You could have more than one wave, but still they're all going to be unique to you. And you just have to start getting familiar with what that wave is like. And that's why, they talk about the whole deconditioning process in human design in general raw, so there's like 7 years at least from when you first, start your experiment.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it can be shorter, but it is going to take time in the sense if you are an emotional authority, you have to really pay attention to and understand what that is like. So, like I said, it could be more, intense in some people than others, but it's your own wave. So for a manifestor, they don't respond to things outside themselves. That's when they say that, they don't need other people. Projectors need something to be invited to. Generator types need to respond to something.
Right.
But manifestors just have their own deal going on there. And so learning the emotional authority, like I said, can be challenging, but I think also, because I do know emotional manifestor, like as a friend, that it does play out a little bit easier for them when they do take the time to get into bigger things, because there is a tendency to want to just initiate plans in a direction because it seems like a good idea, but not realizing that other people would be affected by what you do can then, you're already moving and you're going in that direction. And then it might be like, whoa, this was not the right direction to go, or this was not the right time to initiate. Okay. So as for all types that have emotional authority, you need to get familiar with your wave as best you can, or waves, and always know that you're going to have to take the time in order to really move into that decision.
Yeah.
Is that enough of a explanation? Am I leaving something out?
I don't think so.
Yeah. And so, as the manifestor, like I said, they move in that direction if they're emotional without taking a day or 2 days or a week, depending on your wave and what the decision we're talking about. Like, remember, these are the big things, right? It could lead to an experience that is less than peaceful. More friction, more hurdles, more, instances of feeling that not self, feeling of the anger and everything else. So it's really imperative for the emotional manifestor to spend some reflective time around their emotional wave and understanding what those cycles are and what it feels like. I think.
And I mean, if the opportunity, the decision, whatever, if it is right for you, it's still going to be there by the time you work through your wave.
Correct. Okay. And so that's going to be the one type of manifestor is going to be emotional. And then the other type really is kind of, you'll see it listed as 2 different types, but they could kind of also be merged into one type.
Okay.
Okay. And that would be, as we move the awareness over to the other side of the chart, to the splenic definition. Okay. So if the spleen is defined rather through the root, it could be root to spleen, no emotional authority. So the emotional center is not defined. So it could go like root, spleen, throat. That's a pretty much, if there's splenic manifestor, if it says splenic manifestor, that is going to have to be the path, because it can't go up through the center, obviously, because then they'd be sacral. And then if it can't be using the solar plexus, that's not a route either, right?
Could it still be like throat, ego, and spleen? Like if those 3 were connected?
It could. And this is where it gets tricky sometimes, because, it might say splenic manifestor, but it's connected to the ego center as well, right? They're essentially the same thing, but they are going to operate differently, because as we said, that ego mode, the will center, the ego center, is a motor, right? And it could be informing the spleen, but it's going to operate a little bit differently. So if you just have the root going through the spleen to the throat, it's that pulse of energy. It's in the moment. It is that body awareness of this feels right. This feels good. it could change in the next moment. It's just now is a good time, right?
Right.
If it feels that way for the man, like that's a fast manifestor, in my opinion, because like they have that internal nonverbal creative flow, and there could be that pulse of adrenalized energy from the root. It's time to act, and it feels right. They can
with the spleen in the moment.
Yeah, they could definitely, but make sure you let people know what you're doing.
Yes.
You inform those around you. That's the best way to do it, to get into action. There's that way. But because then, like we said, so that's splenic, but if it's an they might see ego manifestor on your chart, and it could still go through the spleen. And so you might be confused. I know people get confused because maybe they have that configuration we just talked about, but then the ego is involved through the 4426, that channel there. That's the distinction there of what we talked about before, of the will center, the ego center as a motor, is one that is really needs to be replenished, renourished. It uses its resources, because it's all about resources, and likes to work, but then it gets depleted, and it doesn't just automatically fill back up. It has to be refilled intentionally.
Right.
Right. So that would mean that the manifestor would have this energy to want to respond, or to want to get into action, I should say. But if they have not been taking care of their energy properly, let's say, because they're non-sacral, let's say they've, been pushing past their limits of capacity, because maybe they've been around sacral energy and they're just borrowing that energy, and it feels good because they feel like they can really move and
keep going.
Go. If they're not aware that they are just borrowing that energy and they keep pushing, they're going to burn themselves out, because especially if they had that ego center defined, like there's a lot of impetus there to like go
work and do, and yeah.
Right. And I think for manifestors, it could be, this challenging to have to rest, because that you can make things happen if you want to, right? But, because they're non-sacral, there's still going to be that underlying, like, no, your energy resources are limited and precious for a good reason, because you're meant to like not do the work. You're meant to initiate others, to give them something to respond to. Yeah, right, or to manage, right, to guide, right. You're just there to get the ball rolling and really bring forth new ideas, help bring the mutation through. Like, you are really someone that's here to like get it going. And then,
move on.
watch others bring it forward to fruition. But so I know we talked about this with the other types too, and it obviously applies here, that when that, if you're defined there in the ego center and you are not filling it back up, you've just like depleted your energy sources and you're pushing, what can happen for the manifestor is they could feel almost like they're losing that connection to like the muse, to the divine spark, to whatever it is. It could, I think, lead to a little bit of a depressive feeling in a manifestor.
Little like lostness.
Yeah, because they're like, where's my spark? Where's my inspiration? Where is that thing that lets them know, it's time to act, right? Because the will center, the ego center, as we call it, I know I keep interchanging the two, but it's the same thing, ego center, will center. The universe responds in the sense that if you are depleted, it could just stop, if you're a generator, bringing those opportunities or things to respond to, recognition as a projector or as a manifestor, it could just kind of shut down that connection to the divine spark of knowing when it's time to act. So imperative for all non-sacral types to know that when enough is enough, when it's time to rest, when it's time to, just replenish and renew.
Yep.
Okay. And so that's the manifestor. Like I said, it's really a matter of, taking your time if you're emotional, or if you're non-emotional, just making sure that you are paying attention to your energy reserves and what you have, so that the connection can stay there for you, of knowing when it's time to act, when to get into your flow kind of thing to initiate. And that's pretty much it for manifestors. Because they're different from projectors. Projectors need that sounding board, but manifestors are so much in their own process, like their own, they have what they call a repelling aura, because it's this protective energy, because they don't need other people to get into action. And so they don't really need that sounding board. Theirs is all inside, and it can, even though everybody says, oh, I wish I was a manifestor because I could always do what I want to do, it can be a difficult path as a manifestor out there in the world, because
I feel like it could almost be lonely.
Yeah, it feels like it could, because it's like, just knowing that a lot of times people aren't going to understand what's going on internally, because a lot of times you don't even understand what's going on internally. You're just following the flow. You're just following the spark, right? So yeah, it could be a little bit lonely, but they don't, like I said, they don't need other people to help them make decisions. They just have to trust in their own inner flow and taking care of their energy.
But that's not to say they don't need other people.
No,
they just don't need it.
Want other people, and they don't love other people. They do. They
don't need him to initiate.
So lastly, that's going to bring us to reflectors. Now, reflectors technically have no inner authority, because what does a reflector's chart look like?
It's very open. They got no definition. No defined centers.
Yes. They're going to have defined gates. Yes, because they were born. They are here.
Yes, they are real.
They are real. They are rare, like the unicorn, but the rare unicorn, not like the unicorn. Those aren't real. But reflectors are real.
That really went off the rails.
Yeah, so they have no defined centers. And so that means that obviously they are always receiving information from around them, which that's what they're here to do. They are reflecting back to us how we're doing.
They're a barometer.
Yeah, they are. In quantum human design, she calls it the calibrator, which is a good way of seeing it, because they do, no matter what environment they're in, they're so sensitive to it. How the reflector is in an environment kind of tells you how the energy in any environment is operating. So as such, because authority really, when we've been talking about all the other types, we've talked about that it is this, it is based on the definition in your chart. And except for like the mental projectors, the rest of the other authorities is this kind of, it is a body sensation feeling, right? And so that helps inform you and your decision making based on what you're feeling, right? But, for the reflector, they don't have that, because they don't have definition in their centers. So they basically, their authority is just following their strategy. Now, do you remember what their strategy is?
I don't know exactly, but I know that they're very tied to the moon. So I think it has something to do with that, but I cannot remember the wording.
Yeah, I think you do. You're just second guessing. So it is exactly what you said. It's tied to the lunar cycle. So their strategy is to wait a lunar cycle, which is essentially waiting about 28 days, right? Before making those bigger decisions. Okay. And the reason for that is, like you said, they, unlike the other energy types, they are very tied to the moon and its cycle, because what happens as the days move on, that 28 day cycle, for a reflector, is this means the moon is transiting in those 28 days. The moon is transiting through all 64 gates of the hexagram. because it moves faster than anything else in the
I love
charts.
the moon.
Yeah. And it's the thing that when you are trying to figure out someone's design and maybe you don't have an exact birth date, but you kind of have a idea, you know, you can look at people's profile, but also look at the moon also, because sometimes because moon is what motivates you. You know, it's like that internal motivation, the what drives you kind of thing. And you could see that in certain people if you know them well enough, what that drive might be. But so as the moon moves through each one of those hexagrams, each one of those gates in the chart, for a reflector, that can create definition in different parts of the chart. Because like we said, they're going to have all these gates and everything, just none of them on their own on the moment they were connected. But as the moon and the planets and everything else move, but definitely you can plot that lunar movement because it's fast. That kind of gives the reflector a touch point in the sense that, you know, more so for any other type, they need to be very familiar with the moon cycle, and even, you know, recommending getting a calendar, always knowing, like, in your own definition as a reflector, what types you'll see around the month, what time of the month in that cycle that you might create definition in different centers and have different channels defined because of the transit, to experience yourself in different ways. And so it's kind of like, you know, what's coming through to me right now is that it's, you know, in the sense like that emotional wave, feeling yourself out through an emotional wave. How, you know, if you're emotional, this is also giving the reflector time, you know, that they know throughout the month as they plot their lunar experience, or whatever you want to call it. They know that some days of the month they might have more energy. There might be, you know, tapped into sacral or a motor somewhere. And some days they might have more clarity in their thought, or some days they, you know, it's just kind of like feeling it out.
Right.
And during that time, so important for a reflector in general, but definitely as they're weighing decisions like a projector, to have that sounding board of somebody or a couple people that they really, really trust and feel safe and comfortable with, to be able to talk about what it is they are considering. Again, not looking for advice. They just need to hear it out loud. They need to really hear it so that they can hear it in themselves, what it is they're saying, because they're so busy reflecting outwards to others, and they are so tied to their environment and what's happening around them and the influence of others, that they really need to be able to have someone reflect back for them, because that's that reflection back to them of what it is they are actually experiencing about the decision. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so the biggest advice here for a reflector getting used to their non-authority and their strategy is, like I said, you know, start charting the lunar cycle and how you feel in each day, right? And, you know, there is in genetic matrix, or there is a calendar function there that can show you like where the moon is in any given time throughout the month, is a good way to do it. Or, you know, or if you just follow along in that sense, or you could get someone to help plot out a chart for you. But really understanding, I mean, honestly, I don't know that you need to know where the gates are, but if you just followed how you're feeling throughout the month and notice, you know, this could take some time. This could take several months or more to see if there's some kind of pattern as to when you feel, you know, more energized or more comfortable or more introspective or more social, you know, just a lot of these things that will help you understand that maybe now is not the best time to make a decision. I need to wait it out. Because what happens to a reflector, if they work against their strategy, that not self behavior, that not self theme for them is disappointment. Because, you know, usually it means that what they thought was going to happen if they enter into something without following that lunar cycle and allowing that time and space. If they rush it, they can be disappointed with the results. They might end up in an environment that isn't right for them, or they are around other people that aren't right for them. It can be disappointing. So what they're looking for, the emotional theme there of when they know they're in alignment, is they have this sense of surprise and delight more often, because they're just amazed at the things that come into their experience. Because if they're in the right place with the right people, the people around them often bring the next thing to them, bring things to them that they need. It's almost like they don't, they just have to understand what feels right for them. And then, things line up for them a little. And it's like surprising of what can happen and the people that around them. Okay. So that's that for the reflectors, I think. Do you have any questions about that, or manifestor or reflector?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. So I hope that these episodes have brought a little bit of clarity around authority. And we're going to wrap up the series now. And we're going to wrap up this episode with the
Incarnation cross of the week.
That is correct. You are correct, sir. The Incarnation cross of the week. Today, we have a left angle cross. It's the left angle cross of spirit.
Okay. Left angle cross means it's a 5 or a 6 line.
Personality is in the 5 or 6 profile line. Is correct. Yes. So the cross of spirit is on the the conscious personality side of the chart, right-hand side of the chart. The sun is in gate 55, and the earth is in spirit. Gate 55 is spirit. Okay. And gate 59, intimacy, or sometimes you'll see it said as sexuality. I prefer to say intimacy. Yeah. And then on the left side of the chart, design, unconscious side, the sun is in gate 9, which is focus. And earth is in gate 16, which is skills.
Interesting. Okay.
I also like 16 is more like enthusiasm as well. Anyways, so that's how I always refer to it. Skills is one thing, but I like to think of it as like, enthusiastic energy. Okay. Alrighty then. So if you were born under the left angle cross of spirit, your purpose your purpose centers on ensuring your own well-being and maintaining a positive mood by meeting your basic needs for love, intimacy, and nourishment. The absence of these necessities can profoundly affect your emotional state. Inspirational wisdom that you share includes fostering faith and self-sufficiency in others. You use your unwavering focus to align your vibrations with abundance, and you radiate this high-frequency faith to uplift those around you. You encourage people to take risks and grow, and you implicitly trust in your own abundance and connection with Source. You are a teacher and a role model in the art of creating with faith, and you have the ability to inspire others to take bold leaps of faith towards their dreams and evolution.
Very nice. You can see is it interpersonalness? Is that the correct word?
Transpersonal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because it is more of that teaching, the sharing, the leap of faith.
Yeah, with others, and creating with that, the gate 55 is in the emotional solar plexus. And, whether or not you have a definitioner there, that gate is there, and that is creating with intention. It is creating based around, do you feel like it?
That one. Yeah.
Yeah. And knowing that, you are supported. That's that faith there, and that your creations, your abundance comes from, the connection to Source, something bigger to yourself. So anyways, it's a nice little, nice little cross there. So, all right. Well, Thank you all so much for listening as we went through this episode today of the Manifestor Authority and the Reflector non-authority strategy.
Judo authority?
No inner authority. And as always, we really appreciate y'all listening. And hopefully, if you had a question about how your authority works, no matter what your type was, the last couple episodes have helped you in some way. If you feel like you still need some additional guidance, you can always book a reading with me. I would love to help you out. And you can find all the information there. There's a link in the show notes, but also you can just go to the website, humandesignhive.com, and look out the different offerings we have there. So I'd love to work with you. But we're going to put a pen in it for now, Haley, and we're going to say goodbye. So I hope you have a great rest of your day and see you the next time. So bye.
Bye.
You made it all the way to the end of today's episode, so you must have liked what you heard. If you did, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode, and perhaps leave us a good review. And if you know someone who wants to dig into all things human design with us, make sure you share the Human Design Hive podcast with them. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks for listening.